interrupt your regular schedule of Time Warp Radio to present a specially broadcasted bonus episode. We are talking to a good friend to us and to our home shadowcast, Trevor from the Frida Cinema. Hey.
Hi. I didn't know if I was supposed to talk or not because we should.
No, you're totally fine.
How are you guys doing?
We're, hanging out, talking about Rocky Horror. Like,
I only moderately
it's a full-time job.
Smell like coffee from my job, but that's okay.
Yeah, I heard you just said that you had got a new fancy job.
Yeah, I work at Starbucks now. We're bougie over here. I'm getting free coffee every day and stuff.
That's awesome. We just did a screening for we do screenings out of a church for the Frida. We do pop-up drive-ins right now, and we just did one for free for them. Like, it was their Advent service because they let us use their awesome fields to have these 150 car screenings, and all of the kids at the church / school wrote these cards that clearly the teacher wrote on the board for them what to write, and it was she wrote Dear Frida Cinemas, thank you for doing the Advent, and all these kids wrote 36 cards that all said the exact same thing, but they all had every single card had a $25 gift card to Starbucks in it.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible.
So all of my friends are getting Starbucks gift cards for
Christmas. You're like, cool, Christmas is covered.
Yeah, it's and also since the Frida Cinema is a nonprofit, we got so much C's candy donated to us a month ago, and so all of my friends are getting C's candy and Starbucks.
I love that.
Why is that the gift? Why is
that's,
that?
I mean, that's honestly a perfect gift. I would probably cry if I got that. Out of tears of joy, definitely.
Yeah, it's 2020. We could all use some chocolate.
Chocolate and caffeine. That's what we all need.
Well, Trevor, what exactly do you do at the Frida? Because I'm pretty sure your title is man who does all of the things.
I was going to ask you if you actually knew what I did.
Programming director.
Yeah, my business card says programming director / special events coordinator. So, of course, Rocky Horror is under special events. But back before the pandemic started, I was also just a manager who would literally stand behind the counter sometimes and serve popcorn with the volunteers and stuff like that. But technically, I am just the person who does the programming there. And now, since we're doing pop-up drive-ins, I'm doing the programming for those. But each of those screenings is technically a special event as well. So it's a really nice crossover for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we love the Frida for a bazillion reasons. It is my favorite art house cinema within my area, that I regularly attend. I love going to any screening because it's not just good for going to Rocky Horror once a month. Yeah. It's also got remastered, reformatted versions of old classics. It's got director curated special months,
and don't forget the overnight movie marathons like Camp Frida and Starship Frida. Oh, gosh, all of the movie marathons have been just so much fun.
Yeah. With the programming there, we have 2 auditoriums, which is kind of rare actually for an art house. So I try to do in one auditorium special events / repertory movies, older movies, classic movies, like what you were saying, curated events. Then the other theater, I'm always trying to play newer and more independent movies.
Yes.
So we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. A lot of art houses are not lucky enough to do that, and it really frees me up to program stuff. And by the way, I don't get to talk about programming a lot, so sorry if I motor mouth this, but
no, that's exactly why we wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, it's just something that I just picked up doing 2 years ago, and I absolutely love it. I had never even stepped foot into an art house before I went to Nashville and Tucson maybe 4 years ago, and they had art houses there, and I came back and was like, I wonder if Orange County has an art house, and we definitely did. The Frida, and the Frida was currently only operating out of one auditorium. The executive director, founder, / full-time programmer there, Logan Crow, was only using one of the theaters. And I remember even as far back as 2014, they were playing the Babadook there. The year Frida opened, they were playing the Babadook, and I really wanted to see that movie, and I looked up where the Babadook was playing, and I was like, I'm not driving all the way to Santa Ana because I lived in Anaheim, but little did I know 2 years later I'd be doing it like twice a day every day.
It's not that far.
No, I know, but that's what the irony of it was. Like, I'm not driving all the way to Santa Ana, and it was like I would literally be doing that so much. But yeah, when I got there, I just started volunteering there because I had a full-time job, and I basically asked Logan, like, why don't we use the other auditorium? And it's because we were just so short-staffed, and we had like 2 volunteers at the time. I was one of them. And now, you know, we're about to celebrate our 7th birthday in February. I've been here for 4 years officially, and I think we have like 65 volunteers, and we're like playing 30 movies a month. And of course, this is all pre-pandemic, but even at the pop-up drive-ins right now, the next drive-in we're doing tomorrow night on Christmas, or I don't know when this is coming out, but tomorrow night when we're recording is Christmas Eve, and we're playing Gremlins, and that's our 82nd film playing at the pop-up drive-in since June. So we've just been really busting our asses at the drive-in.
We've been really lucky, and we've been able to go to quite a few of the drive-ins, and we always try and scream at you from out of the car window, but it doesn't always work.
You're a busy man. You wear a lot of caps.
That is my biggest regret at the drive-ins, is that I never have any time to say hi to anybody, because by the time I do, the movie has started. So it's like, I'm not going to walk up to someone's car and interrupt their movie.
Don't like think that we feel bad about you not like saying hi. We know you're busy. We just were like, hey, we're over here, and we just wanted to acknowledge that
we're like,
we
know him. We know him.
He's famous. We know him.
I'll give y'all a shout out on the mic next time.
Fuck yeah.
That's how it is at Rocky Horror. Honestly, Rocky Horror was something that now I look back on 9 months later, and I was like, man, I really, really took that for granted. Like, that was, to me, Rocky Horror was a highlight of my month, and like, when the night would come around, I'd be like, okay, Rocky Horror Night, and then my brain would kind of go into survival mode. So it'd be like, I just have to survive Rocky Horror. Because
it's so late, and there's a million people there.
I know I'm gonna be there till like 4, and like it's like just this survival thing, and like I just miss it so much now. And it's just a perfect example of, you say, like, anybody who tries to say hi to me like at the drive-ins. It was like that at Rocky Horror too. Like, if the cast would try to say hi to me, be like, hey everybody, and I would just have to keep doing something, you know. And I just always felt bad about that.
Don't worry, the first show that we have with a shadowcast, I'll bring you cold brew again.
Oh no.
I remember
I brought you that late night.
I brought you that one cup, and you were like, I never drink coffee, but this was great. Coffee. And you're like bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, no. That was the one time cold brew worked well for me.
But okay, so you were saying that the other theater was not being used, and then you totally buried the lead that the Frida shows so many excellent new horror releases, new indie releases, new foreign films. Like, oh my gosh, Trevor, you must watch so many movies that, like, I only see roughly like a fifth of what you recommend to me every month, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think as a programmer, a lot of people are like, oh, you watch all these movies that you play. I was like, no, I don't. I just book them because people want to see them. I just used our trends. And we're a community art house, so I think the worst kind of programming would be like if I was just programming movies that I liked. It's like, I'm not playing movies I just like. It's just people literally tell me what they want to see, and I love the idea of someone coming in and them saying, like, so I had a person who came into the theater, like, for, let's say, like 2 months before before we shut down, because as y'all know, on March 13th, Friday the 13th, Rocky Horror Picture Show night was the last night the Frida Cinema was open. 2 months prior to that, I had someone coming in, and every time they would come in, they would say, when are you playing Twilight? And they would kind of like rib me about that. And I was like, no, I would be like, I'm dead serious. We will play Twilight. Like, just give me some time. And they're like, okay, yeah, you're going to play Twilight. And I'm like, if you really want to see Twilight, I will play it. And so in January at the pop-up drive-in, we are playing the 2009 film Twilight.
Okay, and just in case that person is listening, Jackie Zabrowski from Page 7 podcast on the Last Podcast Network, she is doing like a Patreon series where she's reading Twilight, like the audiobook style, for their Patreon. and it's hilarious. She's literally going on and just like reading chapter by chapter the Twilight series.
What a funny idea.
That sounds awesome. We should do a live table read of the entire Twilight saga.
I'm
Trevor,
kind of down.
Me. Don't you tempt me. We'll make a radio show out of this, okay? But yeah, so that's good to know that, you know, the community has great taste in movies.
Okay, but if you were to put on like a whole week of like Trevor's top films, so like,
oh my gosh,
7 days of programming where you got to pick every movie that showed, what would you show?
Yeah, I'm not saying my likes and dislikes don't blend in with what the Frida, you know, community likes as well. I mean, you're gonna see a lot of the similar stuff. It's gonna be a lot of genre films. I definitely skew towards horror and stuff like that, but it just so happens so does the Frida community that comes in and sees movies. Sometimes I get afraid that I'm gonna be pigeonholed into being like, oh, that's the theater that only plays weird and horror movies. But Logan and I have fully embraced that. Like, when we have tried to break out of that, it has not worked. And we are a nonprofit, and we will not be around forever if we try to play the movies that people are not going to show up to. But that's on us to find sponsorships for movies that sometimes we feel like there are movies that are incredibly important that need to be played, and we know no one will show up to them. But that's where sponsorships come in. We'll go and get a sponsorship from somebody. We'll make no money on tickets, but it didn't matter because the person sponsored us. And I think some movies are culturally relevant enough to be played without making money. But I will name drop some movies for you since you asked. I'm not gonna skirt around the question, but I'm looking at a backdrop I have on my computer right now. So I see American Werewolf in London. I absolutely love. We just played Black Christmas literally last night at the drive-in. That is my favorite horror movie of all time.
It's such a good feminist film. Love the original Black Christmas.
Black Christmas is so good. A couple of ones that we actually have never played. The original King Kong, I would love to see play at the Frida. That would be awesome. A movie that I get criticized for playing too much is John Carpenter's The Thing. But
that's like one of the greatest horror films ever made.
No, I would... Okay, you know what my favorite horror movies are, because I talk about them all the time. But I would argue that probably The Thing is the best horror movie that's been made yet.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's not just the atmosphere, it's not just the soundtrack, it's not just the Carpenter stuff that you get in Halloween that's like classic horror movie trope stuff, you know? It's also the social commentary, and then you're getting... You don't trust anybody, and
it's like a constant state of anxiety literally the entire movie. Ugh, The Thing is just chef's kiss, honestly, the best horror movie.
Well, then also it starts with the dogs. So like you get put at a really high level of holy shit, this is the scare factor. Like, if this is how hard they're going in the first 15 minutes, I'm afraid of what else this monster is they're gonna show me later. Oh my gosh, the practical effects. Oh,
sorry to go on a tangent. We'll let you continue your list.
So play The Thing more often, damn it. Play it more.
I think that Black Christmas, the original one, and The Thing are the two best horror movies ever made.
Yes.
And it just I know we were having a conversation last night about how, like, I think Jaws is like my favorite movie of all time, and also I think it's the best movie ever made. And then, like, there's no subjectivity at all in terms of, like, I think that Black Christmas and The Thing are the two best horror movies ever made. Also, they're my two favorite horror movies ever made. So, like, people are like, wait, you have to delineate between those two things. And I said, well, though, with those specific films, I do not actually, because I believe they are
that I can't separate from that opinion.
Oh my god, both of those films are just so well done.
I think from like the age 25 to 30, I was mentioning earlier that I turned 30 in November, and I think that was when, because I didn't really get into movies until I was like 18, 19, and I devoured films. Like you were talking about how, like, you were like, oh, you must watch so many movies. I watched so many movies from when I was like 18 to 25, and 25 to 30 was like this journey of like having to realize that my tastes and what I like actually, like, I don't have to be ashamed that they are like Jurassic Park and Godzilla movies, and like I think these are the movies I really, really like, but being an art house programmer, I do have the backbone of being like, I can name every movie that Federico Fellini made. You know what I mean? Like, I can do that for you. I've seen them all, and I like them, but I'm not going to lie to myself and say that I like, the white chic over, like, Lord of the Rings. Like, I like Lord of the Rings more. Like, I'm not a... It's like... Yeah. So I think people who come into our art house, I think they really enjoy that there's not that snooty atmosphere that we will do in Ingmar Bergman month, but we'll also play, like, The Exorcist on Friday night.
Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely. I think the last Camp Frida that I went to was the one where you guys showed The Exorcist 3.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And I just, like, cracked up the entire movie because, like, number one, The Exorcist 3 is a hilarious movie, even though it doesn't mean to be. But also, like, you just are surrounded by such a high caliber of, like, human beings. Like, every single person that comes to the Frida is amazing, and that's because of the environment that you guys have created.
Yeah, you want to hang out, like, before pandemic, I was a member at the Frida, and yeah, my usual, like, go-to day off would be to go pick up a paleta at La Michoacana and have a popsicle and then go watch an afternoon matinee at the Frida. Like, that was I love doing that. I love it. I miss it so much. I can't wait for it to come back. Truly, like, my favorite kind of way to spend my day. And
sometimes I get jealous that I never got to be a Frida patron. You know what I mean? Like, I the second I walked in, the first time I ever went there, I went to see The Man Who Fell to Earth, the European uncut edition, the week that David Bowie passed away. And
oh my gosh,
I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe a theater in Orange County is playing this. And I went and saw it, and then that was the last time I ever just went as a patron. I literally became a volunteer immediately, and then just kind of now programming. But
you knew you were in love.
Yeah. I mean, I just was like, oh, you know what? I think if I just, like, removed myself from this, and I would really like the Frida as well. And people think that's so gauche, but whatever.
No, it's totally valid to believe in the place of your employment, and also, like, people love it. Fuck yeah, I love the Frida. I will talk about it all the time. If I can send anybody to go see a movie, it's like, go there. They show The Shining, they show Mandy, they show Cats, they show everything.
Like, literally
new
anything
A24
that you can imagine.
Oh my gosh, no, literally, like, the A24 movies that I want to watch that don't get released at AMC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are at the Frida.
That's an interesting thing, because A24 will not let us play their top line movies, but they'll let us play the ones that other theaters don't. And so I'm always, like, attacking that from the angle of, like, well, cool, we really didn't want to play those ones that everyone else was playing, so give us even your weirder A24 stuff. Can I take a step back for a second and talk about those 12-hour marathons? I just want to, because I've never been able to talk about them.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, please.
That idea came from the Loft Cinema in Tucson, Arizona, which I believe is the best art house / movie theater in the world. I absolutely love it. That's really what got me into art houses. They're absolutely incredible. If anyone's ever in Tucson, Arizona, check out the Loft Cinema. But they do a 12-hour all-nighter, which is not a novel concept. There's a lot of other art houses do it, but I came to the Frida with that idea in mind. I pitched it to Logan, and then two managers at the time who worked there, who don't work there anymore, Alyssa and Brian, they took it and they just ran with it, and they themed it out. We had Starship Frida, which was our 12-hour science fiction marathon, and then Camp Frida, which is our horror marathon, once in October, and I believe the other one's in April usually. And what I really liked is that they just took it and ran with it, and they did an amazing job with it. And then I basically just kind of was the projector, what's it called, the projectionist on the night up, and but what they did that I really, really liked is that not only did they take it, but then they took it and they made a committee of Frida volunteers, like 8 or 9 or 10 Frida volunteers. So the movies that you're watching when you come to Camp Frida and Starship Frida that we don't announce, those are picked by volunteers. So Alyssa and Brian allowed the volunteers to really get involved twice a year in the programming in this big event that we did, 2 of the biggest events that we do all year. And I really liked it that it had the feel of the Frida volunteers on it.
And you can tell because, like, those movies are kind of are just like what the everyday person wants to see, being like me. So it's like you can tell that somebody literally just went, you know what movie I want to watch? And that's what I love so much, is it's just it doesn't feel snooty at all, like you were saying. It feels literally like somebody came in and was like, man, I want to watch The Craft.
Their favorite movie. They just picked like their favorite movie. They authentically wanted to see it on a big screen. And yeah, you guys have volunteers pick like movies a couple of times a month, regularly anyway, though, right?
Yeah, we're supposed to only have one volunteer of the month, but it always ends up being like 2 or 3 volunteers a month, which makes my programming easier because I just go to them. But yeah, no, I love the Camp Frida and Starship Frida programming, because oftentimes I'll think of a movie throughout the year and it'll be like, you know what, no, that's better for Camp Frida or Starship Frida. And they pick movies, how should I say this, that wouldn't play at the Frida like in normal hours, or sometimes.
Sure.
A lot of the times where I'm just like, I don't know if we could sell tickets to that movie on a Saturday night, but boy, would it work well at like 2 a.m. during Camp Frida.
Hell yeah.
Yep. I also, oh man, did you finish your 7-day programming?
I know, we
got
like totally
sidetracked by the thing.
Oh no, well, so probably some Godzilla movies in there, which I've been actually very happy. We've been able to play 2 of those at the drive-in so far, and they've both done really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like creature features. I like horror movies. And then I would probably throw some like artsy stuff in there. Like anybody who's really into artsy films will probably roll their eyes, but like something like Stalker or Solaris, something from Tarkovsky that we haven't played yet. But yeah, no, I wouldn't shy away from a whole week of just like slasher movies, Universal monster movies, of course, and then end it with Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What a way to have a finale. Because so then you have been with Chaos since Chaos.
A little bit after Chaos started. So it started as Logan Press Play, but now it's Trevor Press Play.
Yes, that's right. I came in. I'm not really sure, because I know that Chaos and Rocky Horror Picture Show, which are literally the lifeblood of the Frida Cinema, and Logan has said many times that the Frida wouldn't even have been around by the time I got there, because I got there close to year 4. I mean, the first birthday we had when I first started working there, even as a volunteer, was our 4th birthday. I remember, because we played Escape from New York. We of course a John Carpenter film again, which is literally my favorite filmmaker of all time. I always cite him as, last night I said on the microphone that John Carpenter is my favorite filmmaker of all time, but like Black Christmas is like leagues ahead of Halloween. Like, I think it just holds up better. Anyway,
I agree.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long Chaos was around before I got there, but they certainly were there and established. And
I think that we started the same year that the Frida did, either that or the year after.
Yes, that sounds about right. It sounds about the Frida probably didn't do Rocky Horror Picture Show for like a year, and then in the second year they did it. So you guys, Chaos outdates me by about a year and a half, maybe. Yeah.
What has it been like seeing the crowds coming in, and like, have you seen a change in audiences over time? I noticed that the crowds keep getting younger, but then I think it's actually that I'm just getting older.
I'm glad you said that, because that is an astute observation that I also noticed, is that like I get volunteers who roll in, and their favorite thing every month, of course, is Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we comp them. Of like there's always 10 or so comps for Rocky every month, but that's how we end up sometimes selling out, and then there's people sitting in the aisles, and then the fire department doesn't like that. But they keep getting younger, the volunteers who keep coming to the shows. They're like 17, 18. But it's an all-ages show, right, Katie?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good. All right, good to know. After doing it for 3 years, or 4 years almost. My volunteers keep getting younger and younger and younger, who want to keep coming to Rocky Horror Picture Show, and the ones that they're getting older. They don't. It's weird. It's like they don't age out of it, but like it does keep getting younger and younger and younger. But you make a good point. I think I'm just getting older. So, but we were doing a private event the other night for OSHA. and I was plugging all the stuff we have coming up, and I wanted to tease potentially doing Rocky Horror in 2021, and I was curious what this is an art school, and everyone is in like a nice SUV, and thank you to them for renting out our screen and all that. We love OSHA, but it was like it wasn't an uptight event by any means, but I was just like, hey, we're bringing Rocky Horror Picture Show. How do you feel about that, parents? And everyone honked, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, I liked that their parents were like, we're cool with our kids coming to Rocky Horror Picture Show. We know about Rocky Horror Picture Show, so it really is not only an all ages show, but the movie has just spanned generations in a way that no other movie has.
Well, okay, so then had you gone to a Rocky Horror Shadowcast before you'd started going to the Frida and before you started volunteering there?
So this is crazy. I was in Tucson, Arizona at the Loft, and I had watched like a couple boring movies, but I just wanted to be at the Loft. And the last night before I left Tucson, they were playing Rocky Horror. And this is Rocky Horror. They did it exactly how the Frida does. They only did it monthly, and I know a lot of people like even like the La Paloma and Encinitas will do it weekly, which is so crazy. But I can't even imagine working Rocky Horror weekly, let alone being in a Shadowcast in Rocky Horror. But they have 2 auditoriums there. They have one huge. It's like the biggest screen in South Arizona or whatever. It's massive. Then they have a theater above that's called the Loft, and it's like literally. Couches, like you can fit 80 people up there. It's beautiful. I love that theater. But then they bought an auto garage next door, and they have a patio that connects to it, and they literally just built like a makeshift theater. That's where they have their Rocky Horror. That's where they do it. And it was so cool. And I went and
Do they still?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, no, not right now.
But when everything reopens, I'm gonna plan to go out there.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
Yeah, I had asked the owner. I don't know whoever was in charge when I was there. I don't know if it was the owner or not. But they were like, "This is where we do Rocky Horror in here." And then I was like, "Why? Why don't you do it on the big screen?" He's like, "Cause the auto garage is easier to clean up."
Oh man, yeah. Oh my gosh.
And now that makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, so wait, I have another question pertaining to cleaning up. Who's worse? Us or the room?
Definitely chaos.
The room, it's just mostly plastic spoons, I can see that.
The room is like this weird, and I wanted to talk about the room a little bit later too, about how y'all feel about it, but because I have my own feelings, but and they might not be what you think, but the room is interesting because I will offer 2 free tickets to the room the next month if 2 people will stick around and help me clean up the spoons. And while we play the room on Blu-ray, which whatever, who cares? It's the room. Whereas we play Rocky Horror on like a pristine DCP restaurant, the room plays on Blu-ray, and while the credits are going, because I have to stop the thing up in the projector booth, I can see those 2 people that I picked out. It's like autonomous. It's like this thing, by the time I get down there, they have 2 trash bags of spoons, and they're like, we're done, where's our tickets? And I'm like, that's crazy. Oh. That's crazy, because there's thousands of spoons that go into that theater.
So many spoons. I remember one time we had Transylvanian boot camp like the next morning after the room, and the entire auditorium was just covered in spoons. And whoever the volunteer was that morning, poor thing, I can't remember who it was, or else I'd say their name, but I honestly cannot tell you even what they looked like. Was like, sorry about the spoons. And they tried to explain it. I was like, the room, I get it. It's fine.
What that is my, and this will not happen going forward, that's my, I cannot think of why I justified it, but we do Rocky Horror in the room the same weekend. Always. And I think it's so that I can get it out of the way and just sleep on other weekends. But what that was a simple case of like, Chaos came in on Friday night. I was there till 4, and then of course Chaos has people who stay after specifically to clean up, and we clean up and we do a great job, and they do a great job, I should say. But that's a case of the next night I'm there, the room's over, there's spoons everywhere, and I just text my fellow managers and say, hey guys, I'm not cleaning this up. I'm sorry. Just you're gonna have to clean it up in the morning.
I can't do it.
That was a very rare case where that happened. So, but I do remember y'all coming in, and then I believe Jordan was working, and she was like, "Hey, there's spoons everywhere." And I was like, "Oh, did you not get my text last night at 4 a.m.?"
But it's funny because, like, I think we couldn't find a broom or something, or maybe we did find a broom, and we just kind of, like, kicked and pushed all of the spoons to the front and, like, kind of in a giant piles to, like, make it easier for you guys. Because we were like, we get it. It's fine.
We make messes too.
The only thing that I've ever like asked James from Chaos to not use, or Diego as well, is like, don't use confetti anymore. Like, just stop doing that, because that is a nightmare. But
the wet confetti.
There are literally some streamers that are still caught up like above in the lights that we just have not removed. But if it was like how many streamers are up in the lights versus how many spoons are in those seats, then Chaos definitely is not nearly as bad as the room.
I definitely do know exactly which streamer you're talking about. I think it's a silver one, and it's like right in the middle, and it blocks some of the projection sometimes.
Yeah, it's really awkward when we're like presenting some like black and white like 1930s Polish movie, and there's just like a streamer. But that's the dichotomy of the Frida. That's the interesting thing about it. It's like, oh yeah, like we'll play Rocky Horror one night, everyone will just be like crazy pre-show, super fun. And then, like, the next morning, the matinee is, like, a Sergio Leone Italian spaghetti western. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's fun. I don't know. That's what's fun about it.
You go for the art movie, you stay for the one single silver streamer.
Exactly. Yeah. That's for someone who brings their partner who's bored during the movie and just is, like, looking at that the whole time.
They're like, I can't watch Children of Men. It's too intense. I need to look at the streamer.
Hey, that's something funny you bring that up. I don't think we've publicly played Children of Men. Maybe we have, but
you did during the Quaron month.
Quaron month, that's right. Yes, I totally have forgotten. Hey, I will say this about my programming. 3 years in a row, I don't get the chance to do it this year, but 3 years in a row, in January, we have done the director who has won the Oscar the previous month. So we did Guillermo del Toro in 2017. Cuarón in 2018, and then Bong Joon-ho in 2019. So, or 2020. Sorry, move everything a year up. But yeah, so I'm on a streak of predicting the best director at the Oscars.
But wait, so then did you see Rocky Horror at the Loft for the first time?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I totally went off that because I forgot this is a Rocky Horror Picture Show podcast and not.
No, because you were talking about cleanup, which was something we did want to ask you about because.
Yeah.
Hey,
no, I saw it there for the first time. I thought it was amazing, but I hadn't seen like Chaos's rendition of it. You know what I mean? I saw it and was like, that was really fun. But I love the Loft. I'm not trying to talk down to them, but like Chaos is like a full show. But I think it's because they were doing it twice a month, and it just kind of felt like, knowing what I know now, they may have been going through the motions, or there might have been drama behind the scenes or something. But like Chaos's like show is like so much better, and they get the crowd way more into it. And I don't know. I mean, I was literally there by myself, like sitting in the corner, and it was like midnight and stuff like that. And I had never seen Rocky Horror. I was there on a business trip, so it was just like this like kind of bonus thing that I got to watch, and that's when I really understood the cult of it, because I had never quite. I was like, Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'm like, I've never even. I'd seen it actually just by myself, weirdly. In Arizona.
You weren't a super virgin when you went to see it. You were just a regular virgin.
Correct. Yes, I just yeah. But they didn't even have anybody doing that though. You know what I mean? Like they. Oh yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the traditions and stuff like that I learned at the Frida, but I didn't get a lot of that stuff when I went to that show. But again, I don't know if people do it differently around the country, if Chaos does something differently, but I prefer the way that Chaos does it. Again, I've only seen 2 shows, but I have a feeling that Chaos has it nailed down.
Hey, we'll take it.
We were founded by like a bunch of veteran Rocky Horror performers, so right. I think that over the years we've gathered a lot of like random information and just kind of compiled everything into what it is now.
Yeah, I really liked Chaos did Little Shop of Horrors too, right? Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that too. That was a lot of fun because I had never seen Little Shop of Horrors, and I have maybe watched 11 or 12 movies at the Frida, but I sat down and watched that shadowcast because I was like, oh, Chaos is doing something different. I want to see it, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
That's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah, we need to do more. other movies?
There are so many fucking movies I want to shadow cast. Like, I've never done Shock Treatment. I've never done Hedwig. I've never done...
Hedwig would be so...
Crybaby. Like...
I had a question. If you were going to shadow cast Trevor, who would you perform as?
Oh my goodness. I that is such a... I should ask y'all.
He's
like,
so caught off guard by that question.
No, you asked me a question about Rocky Horror Picture Show. What kind of podcast is this? You put me on the spot. I literally was like, what kind of questions could they ask me? It's such an obvious question. Can y'all just cast me? Tell me what you would see, and I promise I will not be offended.
Would you not do Frankenfurter?
I don't think I could pull it off.
But you're so tall.
Yeah.
I know. Don't pigeonhole me though.
But like,
would you do Brad?
Yeah, I was gonna say Brad.
Okay, so the one thing that came to my mind was Brad, but I will not. So I would rather do Frankenfurter. I refuse.
What about Eddie? Because he's only there for a couple minutes.
Oh,
yeah. So that's a really, really, really good one. That again, you asked me the question, I said, and I was like, I don't have an answer, and then I had like 3 answers. But that's a really good one because it's like, what can I be in it like the least? You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
I think that.
And
would
can
be
you
fun.
do the lifts? Do you think you could lift your Columbia?
I absolutely could. Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
I don't know,
So
actually.
Katie, consider this Trevor signing up for Eddie when we come back.
I think I've atrophied enough in quarantine to where maybe I can't pick up anything anymore. But give me a couple of months.
Eddie is really fun, though. I do love Eddie. I've played him all of once, and it was fantastic. But as a Columbia, I do love Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
If it requires any sort of charisma, or although I will say I get on the microphone, I've done this like 80 plus times at the drive-in, and I'll get done with an intro or whatever, and then like my person who's sitting there every once in a while, sometimes it won't go that great, but it's extremely hard talking in front of cars that are not responding to you in any way, and I hate when people get on the microphone and they complain about how difficult it was, or after everything they say, honk your horn if blah 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 blah. I do that a couple of times, but I'll say like shout out to the venue, shout out to like my volunteers or whatever. But I'll like hand the mic to my AV guy, either Aaron or Jad, and they'll be like, "You're getting like okay on the microphone." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm like okay on the microphone," but I would never say I have the charisma to like do a shadow cast. And also I don't know the movie well enough, if we're being honest.
Okay, but it's like a totally different thing because I will go out there and perform as literally any of the characters, but ask me to do like the list of people who played each role at the end of the movie, and I panic every time. Yeah. And I've done it like 3 times now, and every single time I'm like, wait, I have to like be on the microphone? This is weird. Yeah, I say that now that I have a podcast.
Yeah. It reminds me of like in 8th grade in my speech class, how the last project we had is we had to do a lip sync to a song. And I was like, what?
What a fucking cool project.
It was cool, but like everyone went up there and ate shit. Like every single person. And then like literally every other dude in the class did like Linkin Park's Numb because that was like the cool. And I just remember, I like do not remember doing my segment of the thing. I think I just blacked out. I don't remember it. So I was like, I hate lip syncing. I can't do shadow casting. But like, I don't know.
Wait, what song did you do?
Did you also do Numb by Linkin Park?
Nah, I did Numb Encore with Jay-Z. No, I don't remember what I did. I probably did some sort of like what's it called, new rap rock, or I don't know. It wasn't like Limp Bizkit, but it wasn't Linkin Park. I don't know what it would have been.
So you just totally dissociated that out of your brain?
100%. And then I was a TA when I was a senior in high school for my what was it called, drama class. I was a TA. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, why are you the TA? Like, you're not an actor, and you can't act, and you don't... I was like, I don't know. Shut up.
You're like, I don't know. Why am I the TA? Did anybody tell me why I'm here?
Yeah. Everyone else in the class is like a sophomore, and I'm just like a senior. It's like, shut up.
But so, you said you would not do Brad. And you would...
You would rather do Frank than Brad.
I need this logic explained to me.
No. You're right. You're right. There's a charisma that comes with Frank that I don't know. They're just so both roles are just like if I had to boil it down, it simply is I just could not be acting in any sort of way. I can't even act on camera, so I have no chance trying to play to the 20th row of a movie theater. I just stand no chance.
Aww.
So yeah, I hate to come on the podcast.
You haven't
and be
done
like,
it, so I don't know if we can say with complete confidence.
It's true. Maybe if I had like a few margaritas or something, you could get me out there. But I'd have to watch the movie like a bunch of times. Which, if you ask me how many times I've seen Rocky Horror, I've only watched it twice, actually, all the way through. But through osmosis, of being at the theater all the time, it's gotta be a good amount, right?
Yeah,
just being in the same building, you absorb some of it. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And you're seeing everybody in costumes. You have the energy there. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe I'll come out of quarantine like a butterfly, like a Brad. We'll see.
Oh, man. But definitely Eddie. I think you could try Eddie. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, I will tell you that the really short roles are honestly the best.
Okay, good.
Eddie and Trixie are my favorites because you were there for like a couple minutes and then you're like, goodbye for the rest of the movie.
But how do you feel though if you don't have like that great of a show that month, and then you weren't on stage that much, so you didn't really have time to make up for it, and then you have to wait another month until you get back out there?
That's true. That's true.
That's what I like about Janet is she has
the entire movie
time to sell the performance.
Yeah, oh dang, you're right. That's like when you do a movie and you have one line and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna mess this up, and then you like tell the director like, we need to do like 10 takes of me doing this one line just so I can get used to it. And they're like, we don't have the time to do this take 10 times.
They're like, can we just cut this character now?
Yeah, exactly.
I was watching an episode of That's So Raven,
Oh,
and
gosh.
Her little brother Corey got he won like a contest and he got a one-line role on like a TV show that was filmed in front of a live audience, and all he had to say was delivery, but he kept like overthinking it. It was like delivery, delivery, and so when it came time for him to actually give the line, he like froze and didn't say anything.
Aww.
And that's what it reminds me of, because it's like, yep, that would 100% be me if I actually had to talk or act, but I don't know, shadowcasting just feels totally different.
Sure. Yeah.
People are excited for you to do it. They're like, oh, cool. That guy is committing as Eddie. Oh, he's fun to watch.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah.
We're just trying to talk you into it at this point.
Would you ever do a shadowcast of Phantom of the Paradise?
Yes.
I would play Beef.
Beef!
Do you know who loves beef? James. James is obsessed with beef.
Oh, yes, of course he is. Yeah. That would be fun. That would be a really fun one to do. I love that movie.
So you might actually have to fight James over beef. I'm not kidding, because I'm pretty sure he said, if we ever do Phantom of the Paradise, I want to be beef.
It's okay. I'll have a small bit part in Phantom of the Paradise. I'll be fine with that.
Are any of those characters your favorite? You said Frank, Brad, Eddie. Are any of them your favorite character? Or is your favorite character a different character?
Oh, of all the Rocky Horror characters?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Susan Sarandon, so of course Janet is my favorite character. But I'll give you like...
I'm so happy you said that. That's not a very popular answer.
Oh,
You'd be
really?
surprised to learn.
Oh, when I walk into the theater and Rocky Horror is playing and Susan Sarandon's on screen, I will stick around for a few minutes.
Oh yeah,
she's the best.
I mean, if that's not the marker for my favorite character of the movie, I don't know what would be. Literally someone who just makes me be like, the people who were waiting for popcorn, they can wait a few more minutes. I'm gonna watch Susan Sarandon on screen. Yeah, Yeah, I just love seeing everybody dressed up as, Riff Raff or... Katie, you play Columbia fairly often, right?
Yes.
Yes.
She's my main girl.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Again, you're just listening to someone who's, not that well-versed, and I was like...
Well, I also play, 1,000 of different
Right.
characters, so I
Right.
can see where the confusion is.
Yeah. I'm trying to place who was playing who, like, at the last show. Like, I don't know who was playing the doctor in the wheelchair, and
I
like,
know we had a lot of guest performers for the
right.
last show.
Oh, that's such a
Because
bummer.
I know it was getting really weird at the end, and like some people weren't feeling well, so they were like, "Hey, I really don't want to come and get anybody else sick in case I'm sick." I know Walter stuck in, and he was Rocky. I think Diego might have been Dr. Scott.
Really? Oh.
Oh
think
my
so.
gosh.
Because I know he was
rare.
Dr. Scott in one of our like last shows, but I'm pretty sure Diego was Dr. Scott in our last show.
Wow. I love when Diego is in the show.
Me
Same.
too.
It's
So
a whole
fun
different
fact.
energy. Yeah.
Fun
Yes.
fact, Diego used to be like his only character for like the longest time was Dr. Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Wow.
he finally like broke out of his little Diego shell
I didn't know that.
and was Frankenfurter and he's like a legendary Frankenfurter
He's
now.
he's like the first Frankenfurter I remember watching, and then I like fell in love with shadowcasting and was like, oh, real performers are doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Diego
Oh.
will not admit this to anybody, but he is a legendary Frankenfurter. Like everybody knows
Oh
Diego's
my
Frank.
gosh.
But he will not admit that. He thinks that he's like nobody, and I'm like, you're a liar and you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
But everybody's like been begging me to force Diego to be Frank again, and I'm like, I wish that I could, but he is stubborn.
That's who I associate Diego with playing, but I don't know if Have I ever been there when he's? I've just seen old pictures of him outside
It's been
the
a
art theater in Long
long
Beach.
time.
Yes.
And
That's
he'll,
where I
like,
saw him.
He'll have his makeup totally smeared, and I'll be like, "Wow, like that looks like passion." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's like
yes.
performing.
Yes.
He's incredible, and I really wish that he would start performing again, and that's kind of why I forced him to do Dr. Scott, because I was like, maybe if I make him do this, he'll want to do more.
So then, would you say Toucha is your favorite song? Do you have a favorite song?
No, I do not. I do not have a favorite Rocky Horror Picture Show song. Now you've officially gone too far into like what I don't really know about the show. Of course, I know the namesake of this podcast, the Time Warp.
But Toucha, that's Susan Sarandon, aka Janet's song, so we assumed that might be your favorite.
I do know this song, so yes, I know the song now that you described it to me. This would be a specific scene that if I walked in on, I'd have to watch the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very, very good one. I enjoy that.
I'm just gonna ask you questions.
Oh no.
Okay, so you've seen Rocky Horror a couple of times.
Yes. So I'm like,
You're-
I have to be the person you've had on the show who's seen it truly the least amount of times.
Hey, but we wanted you on this show because we adore you. So
No, I
And also
appreciate you
it's a-
having me on.
It's a great perspective to have
Yes.
because like it's so in our DNA that
Mm-hmm.
we'll fly off the handle with
like weird
an
references
idea.
and stuff.
And like, oh my gosh, my roommates watched it recently. Yeah. Finally. And they, at the end of it, had the look on their face that like I forgot people truly are confused by the movie if they don't have any kind of, if they're not prepared that it's a musical and that it's, I think I've said it before that like the fact that half of them are British and you kind of want subtitles on so you can like understand the accent on top of them singing. It just is so complicated. So I wanted to hear your opinion on it also, if you're not that familiar, because none of it makes sense. So I want to know if you've made any sense out of it.
Sorry, I just wanted to sidetrack real quick. I have not told you this, but I listen to this podcast. I'm a big podcast person. I listen to like 40 podcasts a week, and so my perspective of having not seen the film, I think, is fairly interesting. I don't want to say it's interesting, but coming on the show of your listeners to actually hear someone who hasn't listened to the podcast very often, but is literally listening to your show to learn more about Rocky Horror, because that's the only way I can really learn more about it right now, because obviously we're not doing them at the theater. But trying to wrap my head around Rocky Horror Picture Show the first time I saw it. So I saw it for the first time on like a small tube television And I don't remember if it was on like a VHS or something like that. And I really liked that experience of watching it on TV. I thought it was really, really cool. But it wasn't on TV, obviously, they would play it on television, but it was on some sort of DVD or something that my grandmother had, of all people. And
Well, how old were you? How old would you say you were?
I had to have been, I think I was exactly 13 years old. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
so
Perfect.
old, like a perfect age, I think, to watch it for the first time and almost
to get exposed
sort of
to
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think isn't that the whole hook of the entire movie, and the reason why it's been around since 1975 is like, it's just, there is so much going on in it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why this movie, above any other movie ever, has had this long of a cult fandom that has just been diehard since day one, right? I mean, like, how long until its release were there like shadowcasts happening?
Like,
it was about 6 months to a year.
Yeah, because it had to start getting the midnight circuit, and then I want to say it was like 1976 they started doing.
Yeah,
I could refer back to my notes, but they have
I know
like the cast.
Yeah,
in
the
New York.
Waverly started doing it like in 76, like for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Because it came out the same summer as Jaws.
Yes,
It was
the famous tagline is
a different set of Jaws.
What an odd tagline! I love it though. It's so good.
But it came out that same summer, so it just totally flopped.
Yeah.
And then people somehow got their hands on it and were like, this is incredible. We have to watch this over and over again. And then they just started dressing up. But it was definitely like late 75, early 76 when it started. That snowball started just rolling down the hill.
And that's how cult movies are made. Like, I've seen it happen even more recently with like Repo, or even something like a Scott Pilgrim, where people are trying to say this is the midnight movie, and it's like, we're not even a decade removed from Scott Pilgrim. We are exactly a decade removed from Scott Pilgrim, and I love that movie, but it just it's not. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. We once we see Scott Pilgrim enough, we know what it is. We have a grasp on it.
Yeah.
And like, I think that obviously, I think it's what people come back for is the performances and the characters, which are just, there's so many of them. The Tim Currys, obviously, your Susan Sarandons, so like even like Meatloaf playing Eddie is so cool. And like, I think that the characters are what set it apart, really. And it's funny that you mentioned it came out the same summer as Jaws, because that's how a cult movie is made, is it kind of has to bomb or be devoured, no pun, sorry, by another movie. Just like we were talking about John Carpenter's The Thing earlier. We all love John Carpenter's The Thing, but when it came out in 1982, it got very tepid response. Like, very little people saw it. Same with Blade Runner, that came out that same summer, and the reason why is because another Spielberg movie, E.T., came out that summer in 82, and it just destroyed everything. And so these movies kind of become cult classics because they're not seen at the time. And then, but like a movie like Blade Runner or The Thing takes 20 plus years to get its recognition, and Rocky Horror got its recognition in like 6 months by the cult crowd. This is unlike anything that's ever been released. And I'm just attacking it purely from a film nerd standpoint at this point.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I think, coming from somebody who is also obsessed with the movie, I think it's just because at that point in time, there was not really anything for the weirdos and the outcasts to kind of cling on to. So when they found this like totally bizarre, bonkers movie about a man wearing lingerie, they were like, this is it. We found our film.
And like, it's also taboo enough and like obscure enough that you feel subversive just going to it, even if you're the everyman and you're not queer and you're not into movies and you're not into musicals. It's like going to a burlesque once and trying it, like they could, and it feels safe because it's in a movie theater and you're not outwardly going to like a strip club and watching people disrobe. Like, you're still watching a movie, and then a burlesque also happens at the same time.
Have y'all seen the Bradley Cooper A Star Is Born?
No.
Oh no, there's a scene in the very beginning where he's like this country guy, like he talks like he has this like really low voice and he talks like this, and he goes into a gay bar on accident, and I mean it's played on accident, right? But he sits down and then there's a drag show going on, and the movie is like progressive enough to just have the character be like, I kind of like this.
It's Shangela, isn't it? Shangela and Willem.
Is it in the movie really?
Yeah, I believe it's Shangela and Willem.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that. That's so funny.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
But he's like in there and he's like this fish out of water, and you think the movie's gonna like paint him as like some like bigot or something, and he just like sits there and he like low-key loves it. And like that's like what Rocky Horror reminds me of. Is like you could get somebody in the theater and just be like, isn't this like energy so infectious, and like isn't this cool? Like it's like it's so easy to be like, I don't understand this, I don't get it. It's like, well, then it's probably not for you. But like, you're lying, you do get it. Like you have passions and understand why people would and could like this movie. That's always been my annoyance with people who are like, you play Rocky Horror every month, why? I'm like, because people love it more than you love your favorite movie.
It's so funny because you will see like girls dragging their boyfriends in, and the boyfriends, as they're going into the theater, look like, oh my god, I don't want to be here. Yeah. But every single person, as they're leaving the theater at the end of the night at 2:30 in the morning, has a smile on their face. Yeah. Every single person has enjoyed themselves, even if they were the grumpy one walking in at the beginning.
That's my favorite time of the night. Not because I get to go home in the next 2 hours, or whatever, because I get to, the music is playing and the MC is shouting out the cast and people are kind of pouring out, and it's so fun to see what 200 people coming out of the Frida Auditorium looks like every time. And I just love like throwing some Kesha on and just blaring it, and just like people just walking through, and you just get exactly what you said. Everyone is like smiling, and it's like even the people who were like kind of doubters coming in are at least being like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, it's bizarre. So okay, so then you watched it when you were young. You've watched it since again, like
at the Loft, yeah.
At the Loft.
At the Loft.
And then you catch occasional glimpses through your tiny window upstairs, I'm assuming.
No, I'll walk into the theater.
Okay.
I don't hang out upstairs during the show because people are changing and stuff up there. So I'm always downstairs, true. And I'll walk in and out of the theater just to see how things are going, and it's I always get caught up in watching it for at least a few minutes at a time, because a lot of times my volunteers, who are all very young, like I mentioned, they have to go home at like midnight. So by the time the movie starts, it's just me basically working, and I can't get away too much. I really wish I could, and that's something that I won't take for granted anymore, I don't think.
And then have you otherwise, like, I just want to set a base for your knowledge of this movie before I start asking you these bonkers, ridiculous questions.
I have seen it one time at my grandmother's, not with her, but it was on, and it was on one of her VHS shelves. I threw it in. It said like Rocky Horror Picture Show was written on the side with a Sharpie. I've seen it at the Loft, and then I've seen it at a discount theater that was trying to do Friday night movies. They were doing like Big Lebowski, and then they did Rocky Horror Picture Show, but with no shadowcast. So I have seen it with a shadowcast at an art house, without a shadowcast at a discount movie theater. So I've seen it on the big screen twice. And then I've seen it on a VHS in my grandmother's home in Arizona. That is my baseline.
Okay.
All right.
Great. So, those voyeuristic Transylvanians, right? With all their TV monitors all over the place. They're watching each other constantly. They sure do like to watch things on screen. Are the Transylvanians, do you suppose then, are they observing humans from their galaxy full time?
Oh my goodness, a voyeurism question. My favorite. As Katie tried to paint me as someone who sits up in the booth watching our teenage people. Are these questions you ask all of your guests?
No.
Oh, I was going to say, because I listened to the show and I haven't heard anybody been grilled on these weird questions.
We specialize them for every person. We ask we ask things that are weird for them, so.
Do I think that they're watching full time is your question?
Yeah. So
isn't that the, isn't that the whole encasing of the film? Is that they're watching the whole time? Isn't that?
Well,
I thought that was the point. Is that the Rocky Horror Picture Show was like, that's what it is?
Is just that's what it is.
I thought that's what it was. The Rocky Horror Picture Show was what they were watching.
Oh, so in your perspective, it's like Krim telling the story. So like, Krim is watching it happen.
I mean that's what I thought the meta like version of the film was that's what the Rocky Horror Picture Show was.
Yes, because I was gonna ask what in that case what Krim's role is.
He's
because
the guy telling the story that we're watching.
Well, yeah, but is he like the host and narrator of Big Brother for Transylvanian's version of Big Brother or Bachelor in Paradise, where we're gonna observe Brad and Janet walk into this other room and hijinks ensue.
This is not a thing I've ever actually thought about, but if we're gonna go down this route, I do really like that reading of the film. Is like he is hosting the Rocky Horror Picture Show as it's being watched through the television like that, just like I watched it on TV at my grandma's house.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, well, okay, was it obvious to you after the first time you watched it that they're aliens?
No, absolutely not. No, and it wasn't even. That is a conversation that I've actually had in the lobby with a couple of the people who have been playing the aliens. Who they always suit up before the laser beams and stuff like that towards the end, which I love the sound effects for. It's like one of my favorite sound effects in the history of movies. But no, I was like, well, I mean. Oh my gosh, this is so because they're dressed like 50s. Because the whole movie reminds me of like we were talking about doing like plays on the radio earlier. The whole thing reminds me of like an RKO radio play. That's I guess if you're asking like the 13-year-old version of me what I thought those characters were, I suppose yes, I would say they were aliens. But I never quite really gave it that much thought about it. And I don't know more about them now than I did probably when I watched it the first time. I guess that's the mystery. That's another one of the million reasons why the movie works so well.
Yeah, because it's so interesting that you bring it up, because it's almost like you understand on a subconscious level because of the visual cues that you're getting.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they do outright say that they're aliens. So if you're paying attention...
But it's, like, mentioned very briefly.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, in the scope of the movie... They, like, allude to it a couple times, and then they outright say it, like, once.
Yes. Until it's then, like... But then everything else gets so confusing that
It gets really chaotic at the same time that they're trying to tell the actual plot of the story.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to me that you say that it reminds you of, like, a 50s radio show, because... Richard O'Brien was super inspired by all of those, like, 50s and 60s, like, classic horror movies.
Yes.
Like Day of the Triffids, Tarantula, King Kong even, like, even going back that far, like, that's why they're all mentioned in the opening song, is because those were all the things that he took reference from.
Yeah, and, if it were to all get compiled together into one movie, shablam, Richard O'Brien did it for you. Now you can see all of those movies and be very confused.
It reminds me of a serial in that way, because you have like Dr. Scott talking about the UFOs, and then also literally at the end, there's the RKO Tower.
Yes.
And where the Frank performances, which I was listening to one of your recent episodes, and you were talking about how I think one of the most recent ones you did was your favorite 7-minute stretch in the movie, Haley, I think you were saying.
Gotcha.
But that final Frank moment, like, obviously where, like, everyone stands up and gives a standing ovation and all that, that's, like, I literally will go into the theater and watch that every time. So that's why I think I associate it with RKO so much, is because of the RKO Tower and the swimming pool.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gave me a really good idea just now, though, that they're broadcasting something.
Right.
In the floor show. They're broadcasting something. It could be the transmission of the TV monitors that we see that they're having an active video feed of in various places in the castle. Like, why aren't they also sending those video feeds back to another planet?
yeah, I mean, if the whole idea is at the end that they're supposed to reveal themselves as aliens from the planet, what's the name of the planet?
Transsexual.
Just transsexual, that's the name of the planet, yeah. In the galaxy of Transylvania.
Exactly. See, you're more knowledgeable than you thought.
Well, I didn't know the name. Couldn't remember the name. Of course.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Transsexual. Yeah.
I
had to sing Sweet Tea in my brain.
I appreciate y'all pretending you don't know the lyrics to that song to make me feel better. But yeah.
Honestly, I feel like we erase the last 7 minutes when we start working on the next 7 minutes.
Yeah, I have a question real quick. And, whatever. What was the decision to do it every 7 minutes at a time? Was it because you thought the pandemic wouldn't be this long, you wouldn't continue doing the podcast this long, or why wouldn't you break it down by 3 minutes or something? Because there's podcasts that will do the Lord of the Rings trilogy minute by minute.
Yes. So, number one, we were we're not doing 1 minute at a time because that's ridiculous. There's not enough to talk about in 1 minute of the movie.
I think it started like that. And then it turned into wanting to analyze it more fully around the individual characters. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to get that deep into a conversation in only 20 minutes, or to be this is only 1 minute and we're only going to talk about Susan Sarandon for 1 minute or for 3 minutes. And then when we started breaking it up, it ended up being
7 minutes was perfect.
Serendipitous. It was just so neat. It just has worked out so... I couldn't have planned it better. I'm so happy with doing it in the and also
it's a really great pun.
Yeah.
In just 7 minutes, we can make you a fan.
As soon as we found that out, we were that's it. We can't do anything else. Okay.
Let's get back in.
I'm gonna because we were talking about the criminologist, and if he's the reality, he's the Chris Harrison for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I was curious for you as a programming director, are we as audience members, are we considered voyeurs for observing material like this?
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah, so in a very meta sense, people who sit in the audience and watch these movies are watching stories happening through the eyes of other characters.
Right.
I don't know if it's voyeurism, but yeah, I mean, yes, that's what we want to do. We want to sit in the dark, and sometimes in an audience of people, sometimes not in an audience of people, but we want to sit in the dark and we want to watch other people's lives. That is literally the definition of voyeurism, I think.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting because then also I was thinking about the fact that it's so sexy and we're getting turned on watching it, Rocky Horror in particular. And Susan Sarandon didn't know when she was filming Toucha Toucha that people were gonna sit in a theater 45 years later and maybe get really turned on watching her.
Yeah, and there's the other meta-ness of it, of the shadowcast as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You have the audience watching the sexy scene on the screen, and then the actors who are extremely committed to it doing it in front of them as well.
You can say sexy. You can say extremely sexy actors.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, of course.
Haley's fishing for compliments now. It's okay.
Of course, I say the word committed. Very committed actors. That is really an interesting concept of watching the movie with the shadowcast is getting double the sexiness. That's so interesting.
Yeah, because human beings as a species enjoy watching movies. so much. We enjoy watching other people experience emotions and go through life so much. Like, what is reality if we're like experiencing real emotions for fictional characters that then we're also watching a shadowcast and you're watching people perform the real emotions and you're getting like the real feelings? Like, what is reality? I need to know what reality is when Rocky Horror is in the picture, because it's so meta that it kind of like makes my brain fuzz out.
I want you to know that you started that with a question and then looped it around to a statement and then looped it around to like an assertive statement. So it's no longer a question. You just talked yourself into a straight line.
Just tell me what reality is. The interesting thing about like the catharsis of watching real emotions on screen and then the double meta-ness of watching them being acted out by very committed actors is that it reminds me of like when I went and saw like the Mr. Rogers biopic and I was in theaters.
Okay.
And there was like scenes that would like it was a fairly crowded audience, and there were scenes that would like, towards the end there was 2 or so that they clearly just like would just wrecked the whole theater and people were crying. And it was just like this really interesting thing of like the person next to me, like a couple rows away from me, was like bawling, crying, and I was like, okay, I can cry too. That's fine. Like this person like is like giving me permission to cry in this movie theater. And like the I mean, your question was like I was just staring off screen while you were saying it because it was so heavy and like I like didn't know how to wrap my mind around it. But I think that the only time it becomes a problem is when you're like, why do I only feel when I'm watching other people's problems, or why am I more happy for a character in Rocky Horror Picture Show than I am with my own success and stuff like that. And I don't know if y'all feel like that or not, but I think that's like, I think it's okay to like live like the best version of our emotions through an art form that we love, which would be movies. And then also the added bonus of the theatricality of it is the acting it out and living of these characters that y'all love. And I don't know why I keep saying y'all as if like I'm not part of it. That these characters that we love and all that. And I think that's an extremely heady question. This is why I wanted to be on this podcast.
We did it.
Time Warp Radio. We ask the heavy ones. I had more heavy questions for you.
Please.
If you're up for it.
Just a bazillion. Dr. Scott has just made his appearance after he's been referenced to. How did Dr. Scott get to the castle in a wheelchair?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this when you were your podcast the other day. I was just thinking about this actually. It's along the same lines of like, why didn't Brad and Janet just wait out the storm in the car?
Yes.
That is a very, very good question. I mean, I don't have an answer for you. I'd rather hear y'all talk about that one.
Because it's like, well, that too. If you've seen the movie a few times, you're an adult person,
right?
That like logically cannot figure out why this character that we've been told exists and then like shows up out of the blue. It makes so much nonsense that like, okay, we keep talking about the Denton affair and how Janet may or may not be pregnant at the end of the movie. The Denton affair also references that Dr. Scott is wheelchair bound by choice because he has previously
slipped on a banana
peel, and he's so traumatized that like
he doesn't want to walk anymore.
All I remember about Dr. Scott arriving is that he has an umbrella, doesn't he? When he shows up.
Yes, he does. He does have an umbrella.
That's like a funny little detail about that.
Yes, because okay, if he's holding an umbrella, he also wouldn't be able to propel himself in his wheelchair. like, that is a good point that you make. It makes me think that he had the wheelchair under his arm and he was carrying it, and then he had the umbrella over his head.
Or he drove and then got the wheelchair out of the car, sat in it, and then came up with the umbrella.
Oh. So Dr. Scott... Okay.
Because doesn't Frank lure victims to the castle by throwing out the spikes?
That's what we think.
Right.
That's what we think.
Is that a theory or is that a fact?
I think that's an us theory.
Okay.
It's definitely a dead end sign that's been placed there by... I actually was going to ask you this too. What if that dead end sign was placed there by Dr. Scott as like a private road that, like, Brad and Janet did have the right directions to get to Dr. Scott.
Oh, right.
And they turned on the road they were supposed to turn on, and
Dr.
this is
Scott's
really
is just,
weird.
like, a little bit farther.
Yeah, exactly. He's past the dead end sign, and that's like just to throw people off, or to force people to go poke around at the castle they saw down the road, and then it gives him an excuse to be all rival scientist and like break into his competitor's lab.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that like we're all like if you've seen the movie a few times, you're an adult, and then we were talking about why like Brad and Janet wouldn't just stay in the car, blah blah blah. But if you saw that castle, wouldn't you want to get out and check it out? Like if you had nothing better to do.
Absolutely.
I think it's fairly believable that would happen in this
Especially
world.
Because the castle itself, not in the movie, but the actual castle at that time was literally falling apart and like had like pieces of the roof and the floor and the walls missing. So if I saw it, I would be like, nobody lives there. I'm going to go there. I'm going to check it out.
But if nobody lives there, why are they going there to try to get help?
Because they saw one light and a little pea head. A little bald pea head sticking out. Going, so they were like, that one creepy guy in the window, I'm going to talk to him.
He doesn't have a phone. What? Like, what are they thinking? I don't know. And then if Dr. Scott is close enough, if he drove there, then I'm less upset by his arrival.
And we don't see a vehicle; we just see him and his wheelchair and his umbrella.
Exactly. But then we're given the umbrella and the fact that like you have to hold an umbrella with one hand. So I will think about it, because Dr. Scott also confuses me in the sense that like he also refers to the camera, like he
breaks the fourth wall like numerous times.
That's right.
Like
he's very confusing as a character.
That kills my narrator. Or there is a narrator for the film. That kills one of my theories, though. That also that character would also be like the Chris Hansen, like you mentioned, of the... Was it Chris Hansen? It's Chris Hansen from
Chris
To Catch a
Harrison?
Predator.
Yeah, Chris Hansen is To Catch a Predator. Chris Harrison is
That's a
Bachelor.
good comparison to make, though, because then Dr. Scott is the real Chris Hansen. He's like, Frankenfurter, out of there.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I know the difference between Chris Harrison and Chris Hansen now. Thank you.
You're welcome. We are all knowing of Chris Harrison's whereabouts and not really, but it's fine.
I just love The Bachelorette so much, and it ended last night, and I want to cry because I can't keep watching Tasha and Zach forever. I'm fine.
I know that we've said it before, but like, I honestly feel like Rocky Horror will be around forever. Like, people will be standing around a bonfire after the apocalypse happens and performing Rocky Horror.
That is so funny. I would love... You should film a skit about that.
Well, okay, there's a book called Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and it's so good because before the pandemic, it was a book about a pandemic and about the rebuilding of society after, 75% of the earth is gone after the species is changed, and it's following 8 people that are in a traveling acting troupe.
Yeah, like a theater troupe, yeah.
Yeah, who go from Chicago to what is Wisconsin? What's in Madison and Wisconsin? Like, they go to town, and they perform what they remember of Shakespeare and what they remember of, like, one of them has a violin, so he plays whatever violin he knows.
Meanwhile, that exact same thing would happen, but it would be like a Rocky Horror troupe, and they would literally be able to perform the entire movie from start to finish.
Yes.
Yeah, do you think that 20 years after the apocalypse that people would be going around doing this and they would be doing Shakespeare and not, like, Marvel movies or some bullshit like that?
For real, yeah. It would just be whatever movie people... Mean Girls. People would start doing Mean Girls because anything that's a lot of cliche quotes.
Yeah.
Zoolander.
Legally Blonde.
Yeah, I mean, that's what would happen is it would just be like whatever the top 10 grossers at the box office are all time would just be like Avatar
and
or
Star
something.
Wars. Star Wars too would.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what's like crazy, and that's why I wanted to document this in this way is like you never know the start of something big. And, like, the reason the Bible is so big is because it's outlasted, like, a bunch of wars and stuff. So.
High School Musical. They would be performing High School Musical.
2. Like you mentioned, the programming director is this idea of, like, how we know Rocky Horror Picture Show will be around for years to come. But, like, I just know, I know that the cult around it will outlive the literal concept of movie theaters. Like,
yes.
Movie theaters are basically going away as we speak. Not art houses, not places where Rocky Horror Picture Show should and will play, but like bigger, you know, if you have 4 movie theaters by you right now, 2 of them will be gone by like 2023, you know? So it is going to be really interesting to see that fandom literally outlive movie theaters.
I think did we ask him all of the crazy questions that we were going to ask him?
I think so.
Because then you covered Brad and Janet not staying in the car, and that was my main thing. Is like, if you were Brad and Janet, would you have waited in the car?
Oh, so I was hoping you would ask this. No, I would not. I mean, like, I'm such an antsy person. That's why I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm literally, when I'm at home and I'm not working most of the time or speaking to another human being, I have my headphones on and listening to podcasts. So if I was in a car and it was raining and I saw a castle and I didn't have my headphones or anything to do, I would absolutely get out of the car and go check out what was in the castle. 100%. There's no question in my mind.
Okay, but Brad has the Nixon speech recorded in his car. So is that like the 1974 version of a podcast?
Listen to the Nixon speech? Yeah. How many times do you think that Brad has listened to that?
I mean, because, like,
he could shadowcast that
this
speech.
Is like a November evening, according to Crim. This is November evening, and Nixon resigned in, like, I think it was, like, August?
Yeah.
Was it August? So September, October, November, that's 3 months. 3 months worth of listening to the Nixon speech at, you know, like, probably...
I think Janet knows it by heart, too.
I'm going to guess it's like 3 months of, like, listening to it at least once a day.
That's a great point that he could probably just shadowcast the entire speech. Is that I can't remember, does that come back in the film?
No.
Oh my gosh.
It never gets referenced again.
It just dates the film. Just dates the movie. Like,
and Richard O'Brien, like, hates that it's in there because he's like, it dates the film.
Yeah, it truly is like, oh, it's 1974, you know, and it could absolutely be a fairly timeless story with all, like, the aliens and stuff like that, but no, that is a bummer that I understand where he's coming from there.
It's interesting, though, because I think about, like, I just am so, I love looking at movies as a reflection of their time in history, and, like, what was Fox trying to say by releasing this movie to panned results, you know? Like, why were they producing a movie about sexual liberation, and then it's also, like, to make it about the 70s.
Well, I know the head of Fox like changed in the middle of filming.
Right, and he wanted to
scrap it
entirely.
Yeah.
And that didn't last. But then it was like, I don't know, I just feel like I haven't thought about it long enough because it's like one of my final theories that I know I'm going to get to.
Yeah.
But it's like the fact that it's Reagan, the fact that it's 75, the fact that everyone is vaguely bisexual, the fact that it is Brad who's listening to that tape. And I love Brian Thompson. If Brian Thompson decided to make that the radio recording that Brad was listening to,
right,
I want to ask Brian Thompson why Brad is listening to it, you know? And get it from the source. Tell me why. Is it because he recorded it, or is it because they're also experiencing a time warp of sorts? I've never considered even that the radio is just playing like what's on the radio. And what if Brad and Janet are driving past the castle and it's got like some weird radio frequency thing that like puts them in a time warp too? I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like you're working on a thesis of like what the Rocky Horror Picture Show means in like the era of like Nixon leaving and Ford taking office and the Republican Party taking there's definitely, I don't know if there's think pieces on that, but it's extremely, it's there, you know what I mean? It's gotta be there.
Yes.
Like
yes.
Everything in Hollywood is like there's horror movies, everything that there's got to be a political underlying to some of it, and a movie this dense must have that in it.
Well, I mean, like, it's so funny that you say, like, you know, political stuff has an influence on Hollywood, because it really does. Like, every time a Democrat's in office, you get 1,000 vampire movies because the Republicans think that the Democrats are sucking everybody else dry.
And they're sexy and eternally youthful.
Yeah, and then every time there's a Republican in office, you get 1,000 zombie movies because everybody's like, oh yeah, the Republicans are old as shit and they want to eat everything else. But, you know, like, it's so interesting because you're totally right. Like, the atmosphere of, like, what's going on totally has an influence on the media that's being produced.
Yeah, there's no coincidence there. I mean, I don't know the backstory to the script or the production of the film, but unless you were like, no, this script's been sitting around since the 30s or 40s, that's why it feels like a radio play. It's like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think this movie was made as a reaction to something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it was shot in the UK. I mean, it had to be coming out of some sort of the swinging 60s in London and England and stuff like that. But there's a lot of that energy there as well.
When did Thatcher take office?
Oh,
that's my newest question.
I have no idea. Oh, am I supposed to answer this?
I'm literally Googling it right now.
Okay, Trevor, you're not a Thatcher expert? I thought that's why we invited you on.
I haven't watched The Crown yet. if she's even on that. No, I have no idea. I don't even think they're there yet in that show.
She was prime minister starting in 79, so it's too late. It wasn't Margaret Thatcher.
Well, that gives us good ideas to go off of, though. Mm-hmm. You've given us good ideas, Trevor. I wanted to ask you, would you put Rocky Horror... Well, you already put it in your, like, dream lineup of programming. Would you say Rocky Horror is one of your favorite movies?
Well, no, because I said that I play movies that I know the community wants to play, but not only do they want to play, I feel like Rocky Horror is extremely. I think it's easily one of the top 10 most influential films ever made, for sure. I think that what we do with the Frida is it goes far beyond. I'm sure you've had this conversation, just like this movie that people like. It's an inclusivity thing. It's a safe space thing. I'm extremely honored, and I inherited it. It was Logan who put it all together, and I'm sure the heads of Chaos. But it's something that I'm really proud of that we get to play every month. So anybody who ever steps to it, like, why do you play the Rocky Horror Picture Show every month? Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, this movie is so much more important than you will ever understand. And sometimes I feel like those people are lost, and it's like you couldn't show them this movie in this theater, and they wouldn't learn anything from it. But I like to think that like we mentioned earlier, that people can change and when would come in and be like, I get it. Okay, this makes sense. Like, of course you're going to do this every month. And people are sometimes so shallow of being like, you just play it every month because it sells out and it makes money. Fox takes half that money. You know what I mean? That's not the highest grossing movie we play at the theater. It's just the most important. So is it in my personal top 10 favorite movies? Your listeners are going to hate it. No, it's not. But it's easily, very easily in the top 10 most influential movies ever made.
I think that's an important distinction to make. And I wanted to ask, before we round it out, like, what, if you could give any recommendations or advice to a small theater or a theater that is wanting to host a shadowcast or wanting to start showing Rocky Horror even without a shadowcast, like, what would you recommend to that person?
Well, first of all, there was a lot of panic when Disney bought Fox. That there wouldn't be there wouldn't be any more Rocky Horror Picture Show. Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't know why I said it like that. There was a lot of people like, is it over? Are we not doing it anymore? Is Disney not going to let us play it anymore? And I'm like, I haven't heard anything. And no, they're not throwing it in the vault like some people were saying. And I hope I don't jinx it, but I don't think they have any plans to do that. So my advice would just be like, wherever you're located, I promise, even if you cannot do it on a monthly basis, or some of these places do it on a weekly basis, if you play Rocky Horror quarterly, there is a market and there is a group of people who want to come see this movie and who need to be able to do this even as, like I said, quarterly on a Friday night at midnight. A lot of people say that El Topo and the Holy Mountain are the first two midnight movies. This is the first midnight movie. It's the most withstanding. It's been around for, like you said, 45 years. And yeah, I think if anybody is, I think it's like if you open an art house, movie number one to book is Rocky Horror Picture Show. You need to start establishing that crowd, and that's like, and like you mentioned earlier, y'all don't just come to the movies and just watch Rocky Horror Picture Show. These are people that you want to introduce into your art house. Art house is counterculture. It's underground by definition. Just because I like to play actual cult and horror movies doesn't mean that an art house by definition isn't that already. So truly, reach out to Fox. They still exist. They still license this film. Get it on your calendar first thing every month, and then you can literally grow your entire art house's fan base from Rocky Horror Picture Show's and you're gonna really like that fan base. You know what I mean? That's how we get.
That's
to
really
the
nice
point.
to say.
That's how we get to the point where we were talking earlier of like, we play art house movies and stuff like that. Of course, I play foreign films and blah blah blah, but we are cultivating a crowd that is not pretentious, that likes to have fun going to the movies, and they believe in event cinema. So I think the step one to do that is to book the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I was going to ask you what you think Rocky Horror means.
But I think you
might have already answered that question for me. Did you have anything you'd want to add, or like, I know since you've heard, like, if you have any conspiracies that you're like, I think this is what it ultimately means. Like, it is this statement on sexuality or whatever.
It is, and I have not looked into it. I don't know anything about Gerald Ford. I barely know anything about Richard Nixon. It is and feels like a evergreen reaction, a counterculture reaction to anybody who's trying to hold down sexual liberation or anything like that. Like, we have a big sticker in our theater that should be bigger and should be on the wall, and we are a safe space at the Frida Cinema. We have the Orange County LGBTQA plus center right above us. We're kind of the perfect place for this, and I have never ever had anybody come in to see Rocky Horror Picture Show. They might feel self-conscious about the way they're dressed or whatever, blah, 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 but when they get there, they're greeted with such positivity from Chaos, and obviously the Frida volunteers are super cool, and I can't imagine somebody coming into our theater and watching Rocky Horror Picture Show and having a bad interaction with another guest who's there. Like that's like ultimately the most proud thing because we have a zero tolerance policy for that stuff, and like I would love to kick out somebody for doing something like that, right. But it just has not happened. It literally has never happened, and I'm extremely lucky from that angle. But I think that is the cult of Rocky Horror Picture Show that has cultivated that. Wow, I'd never put those two words together, cult and cultivated. That type of crowd. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show fans. I'm curious, has anyone ever come on this podcast and said that one of their favorite movies is not Rocky Horror Picture Show, like I just said? Because now I'm literally trying to I'm like talking myself into it. I'm like, is this one of my favorite movies?
Maybe it's not one of your favorite movies, but maybe like the community it's created is like one of your favorites.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be the favorite, right? I mean, like what other community? What other film? I mean, Star Wars fans suck.
We don't want to talk about like Marvel fans either.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, like everybody is like. Can you imagine? Oh, I don't know, because we don't need to talk about this, but I'm curious if like Rocky Horror Picture Show, because I know there was a remake and stuff like that, but I don't remember there being any toxicity. It was just like I think the general. Yeah, and I could be totally wrong about this. The general thing about like the remake that came out, and y'all would know more about this, but I think it was on Fox or whatever. I think the general thing was like, yeah, remake it, and like we still have the original. Like no one's worried about the original going away. You know, it's not a Ghostbusters situation where everyone freaked out.
It wasn't like incredibly toxic. Like people were pissy about it, but then people are pissy about remakes all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it wasn't like we're gonna boycott this movie, blah blah blah. No, it was just like it's a shitty remake. Everybody has shitty remakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like this back pocket thing of like, what if it's better and people want to like this version better or whatever? That was never going to happen. That's never going to happen with a remake. It's never going to be better than the original. Do you know what I mean? Like in the way of especially a movie like this that has just endured for so long. So
yes, absolutely. I think it's something that we're probably going to start seeing a lot of movies that feel like Rocky Horror, and a lot of movies that pretend they're not directly influenced by Rocky Horror, but like it is everywhere right now.
Yeah.
People are oh my gosh, kids that are going to like film school right now and are 18, 19 years old and love the Rocky Horror Picture Show are going to cite Jim Sharman as one of their favorite directors, and we're going to get a lot. I'm just waiting for a really, really good follow-up to Shock Treatment that like rounds out the universe, that answers all of the unanswered questions, so that like Star Wars, it kind of you know the bubble, you know the whole universe, and now it can kind of be closed. Because Shock Treatment opened up so many wormholes that I just and I mean, I think it's intentionally left ambiguous because I think they did plan maybe to write another one. And that's why we don't know who Frank's mom is.
Would you trust any current filmmaker with making the third film in that quote-unquote trilogy?
I haven't thought about this. That's a really good question.
I mean, Jim Sharman is still alive, right? He's like pushing 80, yeah. But I mean, if he would do it, obviously, and anyone would let him do it. And it's so weird that like he just probably has no interest in doing it. Otherwise, you would think that a studio, a small studio, would be like, you want $10 million to make the third film in this trilogy?
Right. Yeah.
I think that he's very happily retired in like somewhere in Australia.
Yeah. Totally.
No, I don't know who like current. I don't know. It would depend on how serious they're gonna take it. Like if they're gonna play it as like I want it to be a straight horror musical. I want it to be like there are horror tropes, there are uncomfortable situations. You don't know what the outcome is going to be for these characters because that is the feeling of Rocky Horror.
Yeah, because I mean, we got like a campy Scream Queens like remake. That's kind of the Fox remake felt like friggin' Ryan Murphy
Yeah.
wrote it, you know?
Yes.
Like, it felt campy and it felt over the top.
So if they're going to take it serious and they're going to be, like, straight-faced about it and they're going to answer the questions about transsexual Transylvania, then, like, fuck it. I don't know. Jennifer Kent would be cool.
Oh, nice. That's a cool one.
Because she's Australian.
Australian, yeah. And
So is Jim Sharman.
And, I don't know.
That's a
It
really
can't,
interesting one.
because it still has to feel real. It can't feel like,
We've had so many...
or like the guy who did Duke of Burgundy.
Oh, wow, yeah.
What's
Peter
his name?
Strickland.
Peter Strickland. Because I loved In Fabric.
In
And
Fabric was so good.
Visually, it would get pulled off.
These are great answers. I love these answers. I was thinking...
Well, we've had so many, like, attempts at Rocky Horror that were just too... They were trying to make fun of themselves too much. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, obviously it's not going to work if you try and play it as, like, a self-aware comedy. It's not going to work because it hasn't worked in the past when other people have tried to do it.
Right.
So I think that, like, taking the other approach and doing it straight would be more effective.
It can't be an American director. That's my only thing. It has to be someone tightly guided by Richard O'Brien.
Yeah. I just... Well, I mean, I know you want to wrap this up, but
No, tell me. I wanted to hear your thoughts. What directors you would
the
think.
director? Oh, I was going to ask another question, but yeah, the one that came to mind is very funny because it is an Australian person. He Lee Wanell, who came up in the James Bond canon. I think he has a really fun sense of humor and also can make a really good straight movie.
That's an excellent suggestion.
And I think I think the hack suggestion that just might be crazy enough to work would be what every fanboy and film nerd always says is Taika Waititi, even though he's New Zealand.
What's funny is he literally just popped into my head right before you said that. I was thinking it and I was like, that would be really fun.
It's almost too perfect. You'd be like, oh, this
That'd be
might
too perfect.
Great, yeah, but I think it'd be too perfect.
Too perfect.
Because, like...
it makes too much sense that how is he not already doing it?
Right.
It's like, can you imagine, like, a what is it, Jojo Rabbit, but, like...
I mean, Jojo Rabbit is pretty dark, too.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is, like, Jojo Rabbit, but, like, Rocky Horror, where it's like, wait, what if we get Taika Waititi as, like, Frank? But, like, as an imaginary friend Frank, because Frank is dead.
So good.
Whoa! Whoa!
So good. I like the Lee Wanell pick because he... my suggestion. I like my suggestion.
No, I love that suggestion.
It is a good one.
He's from the world of horror, but also, like, on Twitter and stuff, he is very funny. So if he were to come out and be like, I'm obsessed with a Rocky Horror Picture Show, I'd be like, then, yeah, do it. Go ahead. I mean, but I'm also not a major part of the fandom, so I'm not allowed to just crown who I think should make the third film in a trilogy that I haven't even seen the second movie in. So,
but I mean, like, I want it to be somebody who's in horror.
Yeah,
I want it to be, like, a horror-based thing.
Well, speaking
theoretically,
of, like, the Saw people, like Darren Lynn Bousman, who made Repo, that leads into my question of, are there any Rocky Horror adjacent midnight movies that you also like? They don't have to be like Rocky Horror, but like The Room, or people try to push for Scott Pilgrim for a while. Okay.
I love The Room. I do think it is... Poor Tommy Wiseau did not know how to direct a movie. I just don't think I think he came into the process thinking it was theater. And it's a very different ball game.
Yeah.
And he just, poor guy, didn't have any guidance, it feels like, and that comes across in the movie.
Right.
And that too is meta because he's playing a character who is being, like, gaslit by all of his friends and his girlfriend. Like, it's weird that he's also a director being gaslit on his own production, that he thinks he's making a masterpiece and, like, nobody can help him. Yeah. And he's not, like, listening to anybody either. Like, oh boy. But I think the script for The Room is very good.
Oh, okay. All right.
Very
the
good.
The love triangle version of it. Yeah.
I see it as a Streetcar Named Desire response.
Yeah, it's Tennessee Williams through the mind of Ed Wood, essentially.
100%, yes.
Katie, is there anything that you like?
Pink Flamingos. I mean,
Oh.
just anything John Waters.
Great. So good, yeah.
I like have like this weird little place in my heart for him being a total fucking weirdo.
Yeah, he's the best. I love it. He's like David Lynch, where I'm not like the biggest. I watch their movies and I get it, but I love them, like the people. Like, you can't
I could watch both of them talk for like ever.
Yeah, I mean we play so much Lynch, and we got it a little bit into the John Waters game recently, which I was happy about. But so I listened to another podcast called Two Old Queens, where they they try to find them through their like just Byzantine scoring system, the gayest film of all time. And Female Trouble currently is number one.
Oh, Female Trouble is so good.
But they haven't done Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I would love for y'all to go on that podcast and pitch Rocky Horror Picture Show as the gayest movie of all time, because
my gosh,
they have like 40 categories that are just so specific, but it would do really well in a lot of those categories. Like
we're gonna
send us the podcast and we will reach out.
We will reach out. I'm not kidding. We've got emails to send.
Yeah, that would be really, really fun.
And I also love Holy Mountain.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's we played that in the
out in Joshua Tree.
We were there.
Were you really?
Yeah, we were there.
Oh my gosh. If anyone tried to talk to me that night for Holy Mountain, I would have been like, I do not have time for you.
No.
I'm in the middle
we know,
of
because
the
we were
desert.
like,
that's Trevor
"Hi,
over there.
Trevor," and you were like, eh. And we were like, he's busy.
We were literally in the middle of the desert and had this 40-foot screen, and like it may not have seemed windy to anybody in their cars.
It was windy as hell.
Yeah, it was a total nightmare. But the second the movie started, I was just like, oh, this is cool.
It was so good. I'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
And it changed me. It was very affecting. Mm-hmm. The images in it are very visceral, and I also love the idea of dismantling the pillars of capitalism.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so good.
Anyways, I don't want to go on that. But we're way off track.
No, you're totally good. I wanted to say that you are also you have a business called Ghost Party Pics.
Yeah, well, it's just Ghost Party LLC, so it's just Ghost Party,
Ooh.
and then like everything under it's the umbrella. You have like the Ghost Party
Dope.
Pictures, where I make buddies. Oh my gosh, I make movies with my buddy Ian, and we've made 2 short films, Foxwood, which is a Christmas horror comedy, and then one called The Vicious, which is kind of a darker, more art housey horror movie, and those are both on watchalter.com. You can go on their YouTube, and they have like a bunch of views on YouTube, and they picked us up, and we love Alter, and we're so happy. And so that's like Ghost Party Pictures. That's where we make movies. There's the Ghost Party Film Club, where we play movies around Orange County. Well, of course, we're partnering with the Frida with a lot of the movies right now. But we'll do like fun pre-shows and stuff like that. And then the third branch of it, hopefully very soon, will be Ghost Party Radio, which is a very similar sounding name to what your guys' podcast is.
Hell yeah.
Hey.
Ghost Party Radio would just be a celebration of, a lot of people think we're just only horror, but we're genre film enthusiasts. We love all genres of film. So it'll just be an exploration into genre film. We'll basically just spin a wheel, and then whatever it lands on, we're going to do a whole series on that. Snow westerns, or midnight movies, or there's literally 100 genres on the wheel. So
cool. That's so cool. Yeah. And where can people find that Instagram? Where can we find your Instagram? Where can we find the Frida's Instagram?
Yeah, so the Frida is on Twitter and Instagram at the Frida Cinema. That's Frida like Frida Kahlo. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Trevor Dills, and then Ghost Party is on Frida and Instagram and Twitter at Ghost Party Pics, like Ghost Party Pictures.
Dope.
Thanks so much to Trevor for talking with us, and thanks always to the Frida Cinema. And thanks to you for tuning in to our special presentation. And don't forget,
On Wednesdays, we watch Rocky.
Bye!
Bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.